You've been doing really well. You've been doing a lot better, by the way.
Glad to hear it.
If I didn't think I was funny, nobody would. All right. Well, today I wanted to go over a couple things. First off, I've had this discussion several times, and I just want to reiterate that the due dates are there just to let you know that things are coming up and stuff. Everything is due, on the week right before the week of finals. That's when everything has to be done. And it would be nice to get as much as possible finished so we can do, so you know where you stand by midterms. And every week I'm trying to get caught up. This last week, I still have more things to uh, grade, but I'm pretty well caught up. But I was finishing a stained glass window, and we're trying to get it done so I could install it before my brother took off. And so in the last 5 days, I've gotten about 12 hours of sleep, which is really awesome. I'm so glad that God invented caffeine. It's great. But what that means is I've tried to avoid grading a bit until my brain catches back up. So you guys don't get, instead of 15 out of 20, you get like an L. Or I use smiley faces and emojis. So I have been grading, but been trying to pay really close attention to what I'm grading, so it makes more sense. Again, I really appreciate it when people let me know what's going on. I have never not extended the due date when somebody tells me what's going on, and most of the time it's more of a concern for you guys than it is for me. As long as I know kind of what's going on and we're all in the same boat, then it's not a big deal. Okay, I know that we all have teachers that the due date is very important, and there's a lot of classes that is vital. But to be honest, you guys are all taking an online version of this class because life gets in the way, and things get weird. So, and today, the things I wanted to go over are I wanted to look at a couple of uh, the structure with skin things that have been turned in. I want to look at some more of those. I want to talk about textures and colors, the texture lists. I've noticed something really weird, and I don't know if any of you guys have experienced this. I've gotten a couple of people emailing me saying they answered correctly, but the quiz told them that they were wrong. And one of the answers on one of the quizzes was trompe l'oeil, which means fool the eye. And for everybody that got it wrong that I saw, they put in both answers when you only needed to put in one. And I wonder if the computer picked up on that. But another answer in the same quiz was supposed to be bronze. And everybody not everybody, but about half the people who typed in bronze, it said it was wrong. And it's right, it's the right answer. So, and a couple people emailed me about that. I go through all the quizzes and grade them because of stuff like that. The computer, the program Canvas is really, really good 99% of the time. Stuff like that is a little wonky. And so I go in specifically so I can take care of that. If after I grade that and you see, and you can tell because before I grade it, you'll get like an 11 or 12 out of 37. After I grade it, you'll get like a 36 or 37 out of 37. After I grade it, you can see if there's a couple points missing. I'll say which questions they are. Then go ahead and see if I missed anything and let me know. But a good solid 7 times out of 20, I'll catch everything. Sometimes even more often than that. But if that sounds good to you guys, then we'll cover this stuff. And then after we cover all that, you guys can well, ask questions as we go on, but after I cover all that, then talk to me and ask questions about other stuff as well. Okay, let's hold on just a second here. I am noticing something else in some of the quizzes. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is a previous quiz that almost everybody's taken. And I just want to go over it really quick. All right. As with all these quizzes, the answers are in these chapters. In this case, 4 and 13. This is the biomorphic abstraction quiz. Remember last week we talked about what abstraction is? Oh, before we get into that, nicety, pretend I care. How was your weekend? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, now we can go on. Does that feel sincere to everybody?
It could not have been more sincere.
That's what I was going for. Thank you. All right. Now, so like question 2, these two materials are the materials most often used in the subtraction process. That's right out of the book. And every quiz, of course, has a couple ringer questions where you say if you don't read the book, you're going to answer it differently than if you do read the book. Number 7, softness of a material does not equate to the ease of working. That is absolutely true. That's just an example. And figurative forms. Figurative forms are things that directly relate to the actual world, to the real world, and generally they're going to be plants and animals or human beings. They are not only those that relate directly to the human body. Representational, it could be plants. Representational could be, a monkey or um, a salamander or a maple tree. It doesn't have to always directly relate to a human body. And do you guys know, who can tell me what is the difference between, or what means that it's carved from a living rock? What does that refer to?
I think it refers to like subtractive sculpture. And then when it's not carved from living rock, would be like the additive sculpture.
Well, carving is always that's a really good assumption. Carving is always going to be subtractive. But I think you're on the right track. Living rock refers to in situ or in place. And so the Treasury of Petra, right here, or the Leshan Buddha, which this is carved out of a cliff face. Petra is carved out of a protrusion, a vertical protrusion of rock. And you can kind of see, can you see that? How this is the natural rock, and then Petra is not added. I mean, it's carved right out of it. Leshan Buddha is carved right into the cliff face. And then, of course, Mount Rushmore and Crazy Horse are both carved right out of the Black Mountains. Out of those three, out of all 4 of these, the Moai, are you guys aware of the history of the Moai? You can look them up. It's really kind of interesting. The tradition is that they were born from the mountains on the island and then they walked to where they are right now. And it took Rapa Nui graduates of uh, anthropology programs to be able to demonstrate that these guys were actually carved out of a mountain face, and then they weren't put on rollers, they were actually walked. I mean, people would tie ropes around them and they would get them rocking back and forth, set up a rhythm, and then use that rhythm and the momentum of the stone to walk them sometimes, a mile or more to where they are right now. And it was, I mean, It's an engineering feat that really takes a solid understanding of physics that people just assumed that the Rapa Nui didn't understand because they lived on an island. And so that is what makes these different than Mount Rushmore, the Treasury of Petra, and the Lashan Buddha. This is carved out of a cliff face. This is carved out of a vertical protrusion. Those are both in place. This is carved out of the side of a mountain. All three of those are in place. And then the moai are actually separate blocks that are carved and then moved to the site. So looking at those four, which is not carved out of the living rock?
B.
Right, exactly. It's not precisely dead rock. I don't think that's appropriate, but these are carved, liberated from where they were found, and then moved to site. All of these are carved on site. The Lashan Buddha, Petra, and Mount Rushmore. So you're exactly right. Excellent. One thing I did notice that, and the people who did it, I just said, hey, you're missing these points. Go ahead and redo it. For each of these, there needs to be a sentence or two for each of these polarities: static and dynamic, primary and secondary, interior and exterior, um, positive and negative. What is interesting to me is that the people that missed this looked like they were in a hurry and got A, C, and D, or A, B, and C, and they just missed one or two. And a couple of them, it looked like to me the person had written it out and then copied it from a Word document and pasted it on, and then went forward without realizing that they hadn't pasted the whole thing. So if you get anything wrong, you can either resubmit the entire quiz, or because it rewrites your answers, or submit the new question as a comment. And then, why is the subtracting process often a slow and painstaking one? No, everybody that has submitted that has given a really good answer. So again, with the quizzes, the only issue that I'm seeing is people going too fast and not reading the question all the way, or not writing down a full answer. So, and I wanted to cover that. And I am scowling and looking at my computer because I'm touching buttons to try to get back to where I want to work, where I want to get to. Okay. Now the texture and light quiz, most people have taken that. I wanted to go over that, some of the high points of that really quick too, and talk about texture and light. Oh, I hit the wrong thing. Hold on a second here. There we go. Give me just a short 3 hours and we'll be right where we need to be. Okay. The 12 words to be used to describe texture. I mean, what I like to do generally in classes is to just have people start calling out textures, because we find it really soon that we can get 30 or 40 of them easily. The problem is the first 4 or 5 are really hard. It's just like anytime you brainstorm, the first couple of answers are the hardest. Then after that, they just start flowing out really, really quickly. So what are some textures that we can think of? And we're talking about adjectives. I have hard, soft, bumpy, smooth, sharp, and furry. My dad always said slick as a snot on a doorknob. So slick is one, snotty is one, shiny, I think it is a good one. We have smooth right there. I, I, I don't know if you guys
Scaly.
have, what's that?
So scaly.
Scaly is excellent. Spiny is good. Rubbery, I'm thinking. Uh, what are some others?
Grainy.
What's that, Abby?
Oh, grainy texture.
Yeah, that's really good. And there's lots of grainy ones too. I mean, just look at how many different sandpapers there are at the hardware store. So you could have one that is like a fine grit and one that's really heavy too. So yeah, excellent. Great. How about you, Becca?
Slick.
Slick. That yeah, that's really good. And there's different kinds of slick too, because there's I don't know if you guys have been to um, like where the Provo River drains into Utah Lake. Right there, there's all that silt and sludge that comes down uh, from the river, and that entrance right. I mean, it's not just slick; it feels slimy, and there's algae, and it's just disgusting and gross. It smells really bad. So I think there's that algae texture. There's slippery. There's the kind of when the wood starts rotting. All those are good textures. A friend of mine did an art project where instead of people seeing the sculpture was designed specifically to be hidden in a bag so you could only put your hands in the bag and feel it. And that was really fascinating because he did a lot and he cast everything in bronze, but he got a lot of different textures. So you had the bumpy, you had pebbly, you had a little bit of spiky or grainy, like Abby was saying, as well as slick and almost slimy, and lots of really cool stuff. So hopefully you guys don't have a easy time of doing that. I have had students before who the first three just copied the six that I have at the top. So try really hard not to do that. Does anybody know what the traditional material used for casting a final product is called? And this is, if we're talking about hierarchy of art forms, this is like the ultimate sculptural casting.
Bronze.
Yeah, absolutely. Historically, bronze is the thing. And people have cast it with lost wax casting for smaller ones. They've done lost wax even for larger ones. The Nara Daibutsu was cast in panels that had to be welded together. And the people that welded it, it was so hot inside of the sculpture that people would collapse and die. So they used convex to uh, solder the inside of that one, which that would be a horrible way to go. But there's also cuttlefish casting, where in ancient Japan, for casting bronze coinage, um, they would use cuttle bones. The cuttlefish bones are, it's kind of like foamy bone. It's quite a bit lighter than regular bone, but you can carve two faces of a coin and then wire them together with a little spout to pour into. And they would use that to cast bronze coinage, which is kind of cool. Does anybody believe casting is a simple and direct process? There's very little that's simple and direct about it, other than if somebody who's never done it tells you how to do it, then it sounds really simple. But if you've ever done it, it's a pain in the butt. This one, people have done a really good job in 2 to 3 sentences, compare and contrast how these two artists do their thing. Everybody's been doing a really good job of that. The only thing that's really similar is like the color scheme and the fact that there's one person in both images. Other than that, they're very different. And then this right here, this is made out of ceramic, this leather jacket. It looks like an actual leather jacket, but it's made out of ceramic. And this is made out of polymer clay, this banana peel. I think pretty amazing. And then this manipulation of the surface of an object to enhance its beauty is intimately bound to cultural and historical definitions of beauty. What kinds of examples come to your mind when you think about that? Like a lot of the times people will use the phrase beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That is not true. That first, people have used that to define art or describe art for quite a time, and they think it applies to all art. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder showed up in print for the first time in 1812, and it's a direct result of marketing mentality as related to the Industrial Revolution. If beauty was in the eye of the beholder, then nobody would be able to agree on what things look good, for example. And what's fascinating about that is Pew Charitable Trust in about 1995 to about 2004 did an international study where they looked at how people reacted to things that were quote unquote beautiful. And they looked specifically at people that were cut off from the world, had very little technological or used very little technological tools, all the way to people like in Japan, where people are perpetually living in this science fiction Uber world. And they found that it didn't matter if people were living without cell phones or polyester. I know that sounds like you're back in the Stone Age, to people that were interfacing with the outside world almost entirely via computers. People responded almost universally to the same kinds of proportions. And it's interesting to me. That's not what defines art, but I think that demonstrates that there's a lot more to our understanding of beauty than the kind of poorly thought out response, oh, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Because have you guys ever had the experience where you come to something that you really don't like, and then as you mature and have more life experience, you go back to it periodically and you find out that your opinions about it change? The thing itself doesn't change. You change, and you are helping to develop meaning as you relate to the object. And I think that demonstrates that the beauty is pregnant within the thing, and the beholder, as our perceptions change, our capacity to appreciate changes as well. And another analogy that I would use is, do any of you know how to read Navajo? I was raised with 3 Navajo brothers. I learned just enough Navajo to ask where the bathroom was and say goodnight and thank you. And that's been years. I can't remember any of it, but I appreciate it. And I can totally see, before Navajo was a written language in the early 60s, it was used by World War II code talkers because there was absolutely no way to record the phonetics used by anybody. Nazis were never able to break the code. And but that didn't change the validity of what they were saying. So if we don't understand something, if we can't catalog it, it doesn't mean that it's not true or it's not beautiful. It just means that we're not in a place where we understand it. And that's the point that I'm making. But in relation specifically to cultural definitions of beauty really do change dramatically. If we look at ancient Mesopotamia, there's something called the Standard of which shows a portrait of the king, who is supposed to be this hyper-manly king, manliness being defined by how brutal he is in warfare and all that kind of stuff. And he's wearing a feathered skirt. And then women portrayed in a lot of these ancient Mesopotamian artifacts are wearing pants. So, the gender markers that we're used to in our culture today are completely reversed. If you look at the FA Kingdom, IFE, and that is we're talking Ghana to Nigeria, right around that area, in Western Africa. Definition of beauty there, we get these absolutely beautiful, very photorealistic sculptural heads, and then they have these intricate lines on them that are extended out from the surface of the sculptures that demonstrate a scarification. And scarification, for many cultures that don't use that as a marker of beauty, becomes very uncomfortable. We find it distracting at best and unnerving as well. And but for these cultures that practiced it, it was a mark of supreme self-control and discipline, and it showed the true beauty of the character of the individual. So these kinds of things do change quite a bit. So as you get to that part, think about how that relates. And like makeup, for example, makeup was not really until cheap refrigeration and cheap processing of sheep fat. Makeup was not really super popular in the US or the UK. It wasn't until after World War II that it became really popular. And before then, people where it was okay for somebody to be beautiful without having to do themselves up. And nowadays, my son-in-law, who is an electrician, and he's a project manager. He works with a lot of big burly dudes on site. He has earrings, and he has he has a special setup to do acrylic nails at home because he loves doing his own nails. So standards of beauty change a lot. Anyway, blah blah blah. So that's all leading. Any further observations about that quiz? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm setting something up, so if anybody gave me a high sign, I didn't see it. Okay, I want to share something with you really quick. You guys are very aware that during the Renaissance, there was kind of this resurgence of awareness and respect for Greek and Roman sculpture. And that's where a lot of the Renaissance painters that we're so familiar with got the proportions that they used to make their paintings as well as their sculptures. They wrote treatises on how beautiful the pure, unadorned marble was that Greeks and Romans had done. What the Renaissance artists did not know is that the workmen that were finding these Greek and Roman sculptures would sand off all the paint and then polish. Did you guys know that? That there was a lot of paint that was put on these things. So I wanted to share. We're not going to watch this whole video. And I don't, for whoever is watching this after the fact, I don't know how much of this you're going to see in the YouTube thing, in case it gets caught. So, but I wanted to have you guys look at these videos that I have linked to in the description. These sculptures were painted, and they were really detailed as well. But when these things were found by the people supplying the Italians during the Renaissance with their sculptures, what they were usually found with a lot of dirt on them, and the art that the paint was bubbled up and dissolving. So it was so disgusting that they got rid of it. And I wanted to show you a couple of these things where you can kind of see. Let's see. there is a little bit of, there's not a whole lot of painting on these vases, but if we go, we can look at some of this other stuff. The reason that they found that there were a lot of paint on these is that even though those people finding the sculptures for the Renaissance market, when they looked at those even though they found paint on it and then cleaned it all off, they still left microscopic flecks of paint in the actual marble. And this is a person showing what those paints are. And then this is, there's some demonstrations here where they actually show what that looks like repainted. And you can see there's a lot of color going on. Severius Septimus was a 3rd century Roman emperor. He was born in Libya. He was the guy that made London what it is today. I mean, or Londinium, what it is. And he's the guy that established essentially the you know, if you live in London, you have an identity as a Londonian. He's the guy that's responsible for that. It wasn't until about 20 years ago that examining his marble busts that are all over present-day London, they discovered that they were originally painted with black skin. He was from Libya, and he was an African emperor. His wife was from Syria, so both of them, neither of them were Caucasian. Both of them had very dark skin, and it was something that really surprised everybody, but then not really. And I just think that was really fascinating that all these Roman busts, you know, it really kind of changes how people view history when they realize that all these sculptures were painted. And then I have 3 videos there for you guys to look at, and I wanted you to I want you to watch them and just see what you think about that, because you know we can see a lot of these paintings from like, for example, the mosaics, but also the Egyptian paintings, paintings in Pompeii. People painted a lot of very naturalistic looking things several thousand years ago. It kind of makes sense that they would paint the sculptures as well. Let's see. With how they thought people looked at the time. And I particularly I love this because this is the 3rd video that I have, and it's the Smart History video. What I love about this is that the person who painted it, from the amounts of pigment flakes, microscopic pigment flakes that they found, it looks like the person even shaded the cloak of the woman so that it appeared to be almost translucent. And where, you know, we could see her undergarments shining through the cloth as it pressed up against it. I just think that that's absolutely fascinating. Well, and the reason why this is important is because color, there's a lot that goes into color as we use color in artwork. And the background artists, they do a lot of different things with color. Some of them use color specifically to emphasize the forms that they're building. Others use color to make things intriguing and interesting. And as you think about color, can you think of examples where color can actually heighten emotion or a response in somebody? What are some of the colors that you can think of that actually, I don't want to say force a response, but it's very predictable how somebody will respond when they encounter the color?
I think one of like the first examples I can think of would probably be like within the God of War games or like God of War franchise. Um, because in the first set of games, the color scheme is very much like red and like orange, and our character is very, very angry. But then in the last 2 games, and any of those DLCs, the main color schemes have been like more cooler tones, and he's like cooled down, if anything. Like he's more chill, more calm throughout the whole game this time.
I think that's an excellent example. Uwe Omer is a German filmmaker who makes consistently among the worst films in the world, but they're a lot of fun to watch because they're based on video games. The reason he's able to produce so many films is because he gets a lot of grants from the German government. What I enjoy about his stuff is he is very aware of color schemes. I mean, he uses color schemes that are consistent with the video game franchises that he's doing a film with, but color schemes are also used to demonstrate or emphasize what the main characters are going through. And you can tell good and evil very quickly as to what kind of colors people are using. Another good example is there's a French film. I can't remember his name, but he did the Silent Hill. And Silent Hill is another really good example. It's from another video game, but it's a really good example of color use. It takes place in an alternate world where dimensions are really close together. And when you hear a bell, even though the physical environment may not change, the dimension does. And so paint peels and things rot away really quick, and then they return when the dimension shifts again. And there's a very specific color scheme that he uses so you can tell when you're in that alternate dimension. And there's plenty of other examples as well like that. Caravaggio was excellent at using sets of color to emphasize the emotional resonance of his paintings. And we can see that quite a bit even in contemporary art too. Jackson Pollock, he rarely referenced real world objects, but he was really good about using color to provide depth as well as emotion in, or at least emotive resonance in the paintings that he produced. Rauschenberg, same kind of thing. Rothko, Krasner, what's her name? I think we talked about her last week. She was like a huge feminist artist. She did the dinner party. Judy Chicago. Yeah, thank you. Judy Chicago is really, really good about using color resonance so that you can feel the caliber and the weight of the person that she's referencing. Really, really nice. And then you get somebody like Barbara Kruger. Her color scheme is basically black and white and red for the most part. And she uses black and white and very bold choices in graphic display of typography to register emotion with the shapes of the color fields that she uses. And she was the video editor or the photography editor for Vogue magazine for years, so she really knows how the eye works, and I think that's absolutely fascinating. And I wanted to get to talking about what the assignment is, and let's see. This is really important. This is really important because when you go back and revisit your sculpture, after you do your paper mache and everything, you're going to be applying paint, you're going to be applying color, you're going to be applying texture. So these color tiles are really important. Excuse me. Learning about the color tiles, learning about the texture is really important when you go back to redress your sculpture later on. And Diana has turned in images of her tiles, and I wanted to show that if that's okay with you, Diana. If it's not okay, I'm going to do it anyway.
Sure, all
And
good.
okay. And then I wanted to show that so you kind of see how this works together. For the color part, I have included several different uh, links to different kinds of color wheels, and they're online tools, and they're all free. But what I want you to look at with these, I'm sorry, that was the wrong one. The Adobe one, if you don't have an Adobe account, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get into. So I'll use a different one here. But there's free online color wheel tools out the wazoo, and we can find them all over the place. What I want you to look at though is look at these color wheel tools and just spend a few minutes with them. Where this one obviously is complementary, and all of us know complementary. You know, color wheel is generally going to have the primary colors. You have red, yellow, and blue. Secondary colors are going to be orange, green, and purple. And what are the tertiary colors? Anybody?
They're like your teal, your peach, your red, or red, orange kind of colors.
Yes, exactly. They're the ones that are in between the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, and the secondary colors, which are the orange, green, and purple. So yeah, absolutely. That's what the tertiary colors are. And there are about a half a dozen different kinds of color relationships or color combinations. Complementary is one of the easiest ones. Notice that complementary is spelled with an E right there. The if you write in complementary with an I, that means that you're telling somebody they did a great job, and the quiz will mark the answer wrong, but I'll take care of it, so don't worry about it. However, what I want you to do when you go to these color wheel sections is pick your primary color, and then let's see, we're going to switch it around, look at different things, and then look at what happens. Because okay, so right here on this one, I've picked this kind of a mauve, and so on this, the complementary one is kind of this sickly yellow green. But look at all these different kinds of color schemes that we can use. Monochromatic means it's going to be the same color, but different shades of the same color. So notice this, it has different shades. Analogous is going to be that it's the color that we pick, the colors on either sides of it are analogous to it or next to it. That's what analogous means. And so if we have purple as a primary color, we're going to have indigo and maroon. Triadic means three. So it's going to be three colors that are equally spaced around the color wheel. So we get the purple, we get this kind of sickly greenish yellow, and then we get this turquoise. What do you think tetradic is?
That would be like 4 colors.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a color scheme that makes a lot of us kind of uncomfortable because we're so used to people wanting us to be calm and wanting us to drop our guard, so we'll buy that from them. This is not a very comfortable color scheme for a lot of people because it's 4 colors that are equally spaced around. Now, what is the split complementary? This is one that's not on this particular color wheel. Do any of you know what a split complementary is?
It's the opposite colors, but on one of them, it's the 2 colors right next to it.
Right, exactly. It's so if you have your primary color is blue, the complementary is going to be orange, but the split complementary is going to be more of, what would that be? Yellow and red, kind of. Yellowish orange and then reddish orange. So it's not going to be a straight orange, straight across orange. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. So I have included several different color wheels, and I want you to just spend some time looking at them and look at the different kinds of examples that they have, and just pick a couple of the color wheels that you play around with, and then pick one of them to kind of use as your principle, so you can help come up with the colors. For this part of the assignment, you're going to make, well, actually for this part of the assignment, you're going to make texture and color tiles. You're going to make 2 cubes. Each cube is going to be made up of 6 faces that are 4-inch by 4-inch squares. And I describe that in this, and then you also see images down here. For the color one, what I would like you to do is just, find magazines that you can cut up, go to paint stores, and I would go to several. I don't get all your stuff from one place. Look for style, those cheap style guides at Home Depot and Lowe's, paint chip samples at hardware stores, things like that. And just grab some that you like, and then use those as the magazines and the paint samples and those color guide magazines. Use that to help start making collages, because what you're going to do for your color cube, and notice you have 2 cubes you're making, color tiles and then texture. For your color cube, you're going to pick 3 of the color combination types. So maybe triad, complementary, and monochrome, or you could use tetratic and analogous, as well as complementary. You could use split complementary, but you're going to use 3 of those different color combination types that you find, and you're going to do 2 examples of each of those 3, and that's how you're going to get the 6 tiles for that cube. And now I want to show you some examples of this. We scroll down, we see examples, and you're going to do for the texture tiles, you're just going to make 6 different textures of, oh, how can I say this? I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself, and it's a lack of sleep. We'll just concentrate on the color ones first, and then I'll talk about the texture ones. So for the color ones, you can see people are making collages and for their color tiles. And let's see, I want to blow this up. I really like this example. The person has done right here, this is a kind of a split complementary where orange was the principal, and then they used 2 shades of blue. For this one, orange is the principal, and they did analogous, so they have red and yellow. Here it's just straight up complementary, where you have blue and orange. And then over here, they did something similar with the split complementary. Here, they did something that is more like almost like an analogous, and then a straight up complementary here. And you notice that their collages are made up of lot of bits of paper. In this case, they just use construction paper to make them. And what I like about them is that this person paid attention to graphic interest and made it so that these collages are interesting, and they didn't just slap on 3 pieces of paper to get the colors. This is another good example. Let's see it right here. In this case, the person made a collage with magazine cutouts, doing the same kind of thing. Here's an easy chair, blues, reds, This is something that looks like a straight up split complementary, or even maybe triadic, where they have green, red, and blue. I think it's really, it's kind of a mint green. So this is kind of an interesting thing that they're just adapting what they found on the color wheel. You know, and this is more monochromatic, where it's all shades of red. This person made their collages out of felt, which is really kind of interesting. I think on this example, this top face and the side face both are pretty good examples, but this one doesn't make me very happy because the person only used 3 pieces of material. And you guys are all art students. You're familiar enough with art, you know, do the best you can, make it interesting, and don't limit yourself to just 3 pieces, okay? This is another really good example with magazine cutouts. So these are all good examples. And let's see, I wanted to share what Diana did, and see if you guys can figure out what the color schemes are. As my computer, you can hear the hamsters running in the wheel. Okay, this is our texture one. I'm trying to show the color one for right now, and then we'll talk about the texture. All right, so here they're sitting side by side. But it looks like to me that this is right here is going to be more monochromatic, where it's different shades of blue. Here, it looks like it's analogous because you have the red with orange and yellow. And then here, it's monochromatic. It's all the same color, and you can kind of see. I'm sorry, not monochromatic, achromatic, where it almost feels like it's not really shades of the same color. It's kind of like brightnesses of the same color, which I think is really interesting. And one thing that I really like about this is that you see the collage has a lot going on. Even if it's all one solid color, there's still an awful lot going on. And I like that because it's a lot more interesting. Now, I've actually had somebody turn in one of these where they said it was monochromatic and it was just one face that was one solid color. And that's not really a collage because that's just one thing. So I think this is a really good example. And I'm very grateful because I had no idea when I asked Diana if we could look at it, I had no idea if it was going to be a good example or not. So I'm glad it is. It makes it a lot easier. So does anybody have any questions about the color tile cube? Okay, just a quick recap of the color tile cube: 6 tiles, 2 each for 3 different color combination sets. But you can use different colors for that. Like if you're going to use monochromatic, achromatic, and complementary, your 2 tiles that are complementary can be like red and green, and then blue and orange. If your monochromatic could be all shades of blue on one and all shades of green on another one. And then your achromatic could be light grays on one and dark grays on the other. So that way you have 6 different tiles, and then you put them together in a cube. Now for the textures, one thing we used to do is have people just make several of these tiles, and I thought it would just be more interesting to make it into a cube. And I talk about going on a senses walk. So do that, really paying attention to the textures that are in the environment you find yourself in. And I talk about this at the beginning for the texture part, going on a senses journey, where you you walk around inside, you walk around outside, and just pay attention to the textures around you. And you can pick up stuff and use them, or you can do different things to cardboard. You can use pebbles, you can use grass, you can use beads, whatever you want to get different textures. Now, how many of you have done the thing where, I don't know, it's usually a Christmas present kind of thing for your parents, where you were given in first or second grade some sort of thing to glue a whole bunch of macaroni on, then you spray painted the whole thing white. How many of you did that? I have like 3 of those at home because each of my daughters did that. I really like that idea. And when we look at the color or the texture example, I think, this person here, the route that they took is they used natural materials from the walks that they did, and then they glued them to each of the tiles, and that turned out really good. And this person did these kind of textural landscapes, where I think this one is sponge or rocks that they glued onto one of the tiles. This is coils out of some pins or something that they glued down, did different things. So they made these little textural areas, and then they spray painted the whole thing a solid color. And this looks really good doing that. And it looks like if we look at what Diana did here, you can see her textural one. It looks to me like these are collages made with different shapes of cardboard or material. Is that right, Diana?
Yeah, it's cardboard.
Okay. And then it looks like after you're all done, you just sprayed the whole thing a solid color, like black. And I think that works really well because it requires you to really pay attention to the actual texture as opposed to the change in like printing on the cardboard. So I think that this is a really good solution. This person here, the one who did the felt, I really like these texture ones. They spray painted them a solid yellow, and that turns out really good too. It does something really unusual to the found texture, because I believe this right here is like the tops of grass, and I think right now that's going to be kind of hard to find, but this became something really very unusual when they just spray painted the whole thing yellow. And again, doing that, making it monochromatic, makes the texture itself really stand out. So that's the exercise for this week. And again, if we look at these 2 color cubes that I have here, I'm not very happy with this because that's just 3 sheets of paper. This one's okay because that's 5. I really like this. It allows for a lot more variation and play with what's going on. On this example, not very happy with these 3 stripes of paper, but this I like because they're really alternating it. The purple and yellow. And then right on here, we have several different shades, so you can see it going from red to pink through several different gradations of pink. And I think this face is pretty good. This face, not so much. And this one, I could not see in the image, and I'm still not really, I don't think it's a great example because this was just a piece of sandpaper. If you're going to use sandpaper, and this is just a piece of foil, if you're going to use that for your texture, that's fine. But what I'd like to see is if you're going to use foil, do something underneath it and then put glue on it and then press the foil into place. You get a really strong texture coming through the foil. If you're going to use sandpaper for your texture, make a collage out of several different grits of sandpaper. We want this to be interesting and fascinating. Look at the different artists and what they do. As in the background examples, look at how, like, for example, what El Anatsui does in his work. He takes garbage and he develops these beautiful tapestry type structures with the garbage that he puts together, and they become really fantastic because he takes sharp metal beer cans or metal lids, and then when he puts a whole bunch of them together, he uses the linking quality of the metal so that it almost looks like textile. And it's absolutely fascinating to me because he changes the visual texture from the sharp metal edge to something that almost feels soft, even though you know it's still metal, because of how he uses it. So pay attention to the different artists that are in that. Now, of course, I'm sorry, I closed one of the windows that I wanted to share with you. Oh well, sigh. So for the most part, I wanted to talk about, well, actually, primarily I wanted to talk about colors and textures. Do you folks have any questions about that assignment and what we can do with it? Anybody? Okay. So moving on, any questions about anything else in the class so far? I'm still going through the annotated bibliographies. I wanted to talk about those next week. You will notice that in the section that has the peer and self-critique, one person did do, we talked about them last week. One person did both of those already. They did get quite a bit of extra credit because they did them so early. And I have the link in there is to the playlist that shows those two videos. So if anybody would like to do that, those in the next week or two, again, I'm giving a lot of extra credit. You know, you get those done before the end of February, you'll get quite a bit. So who wants to give that a stab? See if they can do the critiques. Any volunteers?
I'm thinking of doing mine like the first week of March.
Okay, I think that'd be great. And you don't need to do both of them at the same time in order to get the extra credit. If you just do it several weeks early, you'll get the extra credit. So I would recommend, you know, look at the example ones. When we talked about them, it was the person who turned them in did a really good job. So just kind of follow that model. But that's why every time you finish something, at the very least, you need to take a picture of it and post it on the discussion board so everybody can see it and use that as a critique. And the 4 steps of the critique, there's 4 people here. I would like each of you to say one of the 4 steps. What's the first step of artistic critique?
Description.
Yes, excellent. You are looking at it and describing exactly what you see. And when you do your own critique, when you do your self-critique, it's very important that you pretend you're a stranger to the work and you've never seen it before. Otherwise, you'll be way too critical of your own stuff. Who would like to say the next tool, the second tool of artistic critique? What's the second step?
Analysis.
What's that?
Analysis.
Yes, excellent. It's analysis. That's the how of how they put it together. Excellent, very good. Who would like to say the third tool of artistic critique?
Interpretation.
Exactly, and that is the why. A lot of the times when we look at art, there's a tendency for some people not to be too interested in context or meaning, but interpretation really gives us an opportunity to help the artist develop a meaning, you know, and learn about what the artist was doing when they created the work. Excellent. And what's the 4th step?
Evaluation.
Excellent. where you're determining if it's any good. This is the one that I think is the most important, to pretend that you've never seen your own work before when you do your self-critique, because this is the one where people will laugh and devalue their own work quite a bit. The reality is there are not very many people in the world that do what you can do in your own work. And so when you are looking at your own work, evaluating it, don't be harsh on yourself. When you do your best to pretend you've never seen it before, and hopefully you'll see the kind of level of work that you put into it that you're not even aware of. And hopefully you'll be able to respect your own work a bit. So keep those things in mind. And again, extra credit for anybody who's able to do that. And next week we will talk more about the annotated bibliography. I think last week or the week before, we went over an example that was really pretty good. And again, whatever grade you see popping up, the numbers and everything, if I don't tell you exactly what points are missing and why, you can always ask me, how you can get more points. And everybody who has turned things in again, I've been doing this course for several years, and I've only had one student who has turned something in a second time and gotten a lower grade. So in that case, I just didn't grade it again, and I asked them to actually read what I had written and follow the guidelines. And you can turn things in like quizzes and stuff like that over and over again as many times as you want. If you do that, remember though that your new submission overwrites whatever you turned in before. So if you're going to redo a quiz, you've got to turn in and redo the entire quiz. Or conversely, you can turn in the answer as a comment to the quiz. If you do that, I have the little thing toggled so that Canvas is supposed to tell me when the comments are made, but it does not work. It's not working for me, and none of the tech guys can figure out why. So I think that my computer is just special. So if you are adding comments and doing things like that, like on the discussion comments and things, email me and let me know. And as soon as I can, I will go in and regrade it. All right. And but that really helps me quite a bit. And I think that everybody who has emailed me, I have taken care of the situation. A couple people were concerned about the quizzes, but I went in and took care of that as well. So does anybody have any questions for me tonight? Are you guys all good? Okay. Then we will talk about annotated bibliographies, and we will go over what people have been turning in for the carvings and stuff like that next week. All right. And today it's a little bit abbreviated. It's a little bit shorter than normal. I hope you guys don't mind. But again, we will talk over that next week. And one thing that I'm really appreciating is that when people have questions, they're emailing me, and that gives me a list of things to make sure I cover for the next week's class. So I'm very grateful for that. And we'll talk about the service learning stuff next week some more too, in addition to the research thing, because what I'm seeing is the things that people are doing. You guys are reading the directions. Everybody watched that do no harm video, and I'm very grateful you guys are really paying attention to that. One of the problems we had early on doing this was a couple of people thought, okay, well, setting up chairs for the community theater I volunteer at is going to work, and that's not the case. One thing that I like about, if you guys heard what Becca was proposing at the very beginning, Becca's going to be working with some individuals, and Becca's going to be doing portraits of them. The way that Becca described this, I really appreciate, and I think that it's something that is needed. What I appreciate about it is that Becca's taken the time to actually find out what the need is. If you remember that video that I had everybody watch, when there's a disaster, like when there's storms in a little island out in the middle of the ocean, people will send everything from single shoes rather than pairs of shoes to prom dresses to tea, used tea bags. And it's really nauseating to me that this stuff is wrapped up in bales, set on a beach, and lit on fire because that's the only way they can know to get rid of it. When I lived in Alabama several years ago, and I was in an area where there were 5 tornadoes that came through. There was an outpouring of community support. Churches, all these churches in outlying communities put together food and clothing and stuff to truck into town. What was interesting to me is the side effect of that. Nobody had refrigeration available to handle all the perishable food. So people were actually getting sick from eating the food, the pies and food and stuff like that had been donated because nobody thought about it. People were hungry. And so they figured, okay, we'll heat up this stuff and feed it to them. It'll be good. But, casserole sits out for a couple of days on a truck getting to the site, and then you feed it to somebody. People were getting food poisoning, which is absolutely terrible. And then you compare that to there was a woman in one of the videos that I had you guys watch who used, I think it was the Target wedding registry, and she adapted it for hurricane relief, where people could put in what their families needed, and then people elsewhere in the country could buy stuff for them on through Target, and then Target would ship what the families needed directly to them. And it was a way of connecting the people that wanted to help directly with the needs of the people that were in bad straits. And I think that's brilliant. So if there's no more questions or anything, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful, absolutely wonderful week. And I will look forward to seeing y'all next Tuesday. All righty. Okay, we'll see you guys.
See ya.
Thank you.
You're welcome.